Are we ready?
I didn't take it up.
Have one more minute.
Oh, you told us. Oh, yeah. And it happened suddenly where I even couldn't get my alternate. That's right. Or just. Good morning.
Okay, directors, so welcome everyone. So I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. It's 10 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order at 10 o'clock. This is a regular meeting of the Monterey Salinas Transit District Board of Directors of June 2024. Good morning. Thank you for those that are joining us here in the boardroom. Also, thank you for joining us on Zoom today. So just as a reminder, during today's meeting for public participation, the public can join us in person here at the conference room, the board conference room. The public can also join the meeting via Zoom, and the meeting ID is located on the agenda, which is the same number, but I will repeat it: 845-0083-6234. Passcode 652252. You can also join us via telephone 1-669-900-6833. And please use the same meeting ID and passcode as our Zoom. So just under public comments, we welcome public comments. These can be made either in person today via Zoom, or you can also have submitted your comments if you submitted those in writing before Friday, June 7th by 3 p.m. And just again, just a few reminders to our public speakers. MST is committed to civility and is mindful of its responsibility to protect the work environment. And we want to ensure civility in the public meetings. The public is encouraged to engage in respectful dialogue that supports freedom of speech and values diversity of opinions. And failure to engage in respectful dialogue will forfeit the speaker's rights to participate in the public comment period. So with that, we will move on to roll call. And if I can turn this over to our clerk.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield. And City of King.
Present.
City of Marina.
Here.
City of Monterey.
Here.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of San City.
Here.
City of Salinas.
We are here.
City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad.
Here.
County of Monterey. I see that
Director Alejo is joining us via Zoom. Director Alejo, can you unmute yourself?
Make sure staff knows he can be unmuted. That's what's happening to me.
We want to make sure that he's able to unmute.
Muted. It's coming. You got him mixed up with me.
Director Alejo, can you hear us and can you unmute yourself for roll
We're
call?
unmuting him.
Oh.
Okay, so we're asking him. Yes.
Okay, well, can we come back?
Yeah,
We can come
I
back.
think we
And I
know
think
that we know that he's there.
Okay.
We can assume that he's there.
Okay. So we do have a forum. Chair.
And staff's working on unmuting him.
Okay, perfect. So then with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is our pledge of allegiance. And Director Smith, if you can please lead us in the pledge.
Please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I will turn it over now for the review of highlights on the agenda to Mr. Sedora.
Thank you, Chair. On your agenda, among the usual items, we have authorization to purchase a bus. What's one more zero emission bus through some funding that we received from the state. And this will be added to the 12 bus procurement that we already have outstanding. So I'll bring 13 zero emission buses on order, and it will be delivered at the same time. We've worked with our vendor to put a slot in the production line, so this will be coming in at the same time as all those buses. We also have looking for the authorization to get into a contract with a new landscaping company, 3 years with 2 additional options. And then another 5-year agreement for maintenance on some proprietary software that we utilize for our bus operations. We are going to have a public hearing on the agenda for the adoption of our next 2 years budgets, fiscal year 25 and 26, and related actions for grants and things like that we need to take when we adopt our budget every year. We're going to receive an update on SURF. We're going to have a ratification of the MOU between the Monterey Salinas Transit Employees Association and MST. We're going to receive a report on recent polling on our extension of the Measure Q sales tax. We are going to get an update on our contracted services for MST ADA services and on-call and minibus operated fixed route services from MV. And then we will receive a report from the nominating committee and conduct an election of officers and appoint representatives for the next 2-year period. That concludes my report. There is no closed session, but we've got plenty on the agenda to get through. So my suggestion is let's lose our time wisely and
Move fast.
don't let me talk too much.
Absolutely, Carl. So thank you for that review.
Madam Chair, this is Luis Saleh. I was able to unmute myself, but I can't turn on my video. I think I need to be made a panelist.
I believe that we don't allow our Zoom participants to show their video, Luis. I think that's one of our restrictions.
It's one of the requirements, because I'm calling in today because I have a contagious illness under the Just Cause provisions of the Brown Act. And I think it requires us to keep our video on during that time. As you can tell, I've been sick for the last 6 days. That's why I'm joining today via Zoom, for the record.
Okay.
Thank you. And we can hear you.
All right. That's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll have to see what I can do if I wasn't aware of that video issue. And I will, while you're moving on other business, I'll be communicating with our IT staff next door to see what we can do.
And we also have our legal counsel, just so the directors know, Mr. Laredo is joining us via Zoom.
And good morning. I believe my audio is live.
Yes.
Thank you.
So in case we have any questions, Mike, in regards to the Zoom requirements, please let us know. Okay, so with that, then we will move on to our next item on our agenda, which is public comments on matters that are not on the agenda. So at this time, any member of the public may address the board of directors on items not appearing on the agenda. Speakers do have a limit of 3 minutes. Please be brief and to the point. And again, I'll just reiterate, the public is encouraged to engage in respectful dialogue that supports the freedom of speech and values diversity of opinions. And any failure to engage in this type of respectful dialogue will result in speakers being muted or required to leave. So as a reminder, to make public comments on Zoom, please make sure you're using the raise hand feature that's on the bottom of your screen so we can unmute and recognize you. And again, just as a reminder to our public, the board will not respond to public comments, but we can choose to direct our team or our staff to be able to respond directly to some of those comments. So with that, I will take public comments from those that are joining us here in our boardroom, and then I will go out to those that are joining us via Zoom. Any public comments from those in our boardroom? Okay, see none, then I will take it out to those that are joining us via Zoom, and I do see 3 hands up, and I will start with the, there's a 582 number 1705, if you can please unmute.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The permissiveness of this board to push for SURF shows me of the corruption that has for decades eroded any chance to preserve our country or our sanctuary. For 25 years, I've taken the bus, and never have I seen the destruction of a transit system as I have in the last year and a half under your direction. I don't know why you even have these meetings except to promote more terrible services. You've allowed MST to take away Highway 68 bus line, which could be transporting hundreds of people daily to and from Salinas. And when asked why that line was cut, I was told MST couldn't afford it. But apparently you can afford a $91 million surf project, rejecting a much better and environmentally supportive carpool lane. This surf project will effectively kill any hope for a train, and Coastal Commission has said so in their letter to you by Mr. Cohn. Electric cars are not going to be the saviors of global warming. The massive mining plan for the oceans and land is beyond comprehension. And the only hope we have is to get people out of their cars with a transit system that is quick, quiet, and cheap. And MST isn't doing that. And neither is anyone on this board. All you're doing is sucking up tax dollar money to sit on this board and vote for harmful bus projects, anything that cuts down trees, tears out train tracks, initiates massive development. That's what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to the next person, Shannon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I came to the board meeting, the MST board meeting last time. I'm a East Garrison homeowner, and I understand, I heard you mention that you are able to direct staff to provide a reply. So I would like to request a reply to my comment. I'm just going to sort of reiterate what I spoke about last time, which is that the East Garrison HOA is being asked to fund bus service through the authorization of the 2006 Urban Services Agreement that simply has a sentence that says the HOA shall fund local and regional transit. I understand there is, a disagreement about how to define that, how to fund local and regional transit, and what the definition of HOA funding is, and what the limit of that may be, what the cost of that may be. So I'd like to ask that this discussion happen open and publicly. This 2006 Urban Services Agreement is a public document, and discussion about how to define these important terms, amount of funding and transit, should happen publicly, in my opinion. So I'd like to ask that the MST host a public hearing, publish a statement outlining what the status of this issue is, what the status of the discussions are, and have a public hearing so that everyone can input, can understand actually, because it's a little confusing what exactly is being asked and what the cost might be and how this would work. What's the cost of additional maintenance on private roads in East Garrison if buses are to come on there. Everything about this discussion should be open and public. So I'd like to ask the MST to enable that conversation to happen publicly so that everyone can understand and comment. If the result is that East Garrison homeowners are to pay for bus service, I think we'll be the first HOA in the nation to be asked to do that. As far as I can tell, no other HOA pays for bus service. As far as I can tell, buses don't go inside HOA private communities either. Maybe that's part of the reason they don't pay. So I think, our homeowner property taxes should pay for bus service the same way Sea Haven and La Palma and all other HOA homeowners pay for bus service. We should not be asked to pay through HOA dues, special assessments, CSD Melrose, none of that. So please have this, enable this conversation to be had openly at a public hearing and provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. So staff will contact you to determine how to best proceed with this concern. And so we'll move on to, there is a 2837 number. So 805-2837, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Great. Hi. You've talked about the public being respectful. I think that's pretty important, but respect is a two-way street. And the public needs to be respected by MST's leadership and the board members. I would say the misleading of the public by the MST leadership on the SURF project is not okay. MST has misled the public and government agencies for years. This shows the leadership, great problems with the leadership of MST. The public has been told repeatedly that railroad tracks would remain and that SURF hired to evaluate SURF misrepresented that the tracks would stay in place. MST's promotional video states this as well. This stuff is still on the internet. MST also misrepresents the traffic situation on Highway 1. The relevant section of freeway to look at is Highway SURF would
So we.
of this 4 hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. There's just some connectivity issues.
Hear me? There are 3 lanes on both sides of the section. Highway 1 has 2 lanes, so a wider section of freeway is sandwiched between narrower section. Traffic flows okay between Sand City and Marina, except during the morning rush hour from 7 to 9 a.m. The traffic only gets backed up in one direction, heading from Marina to Sand City. The other direction flows okay. During the afternoon, early evening rush hour, traffic flows okay in both directions. Trouble is MST studies look at traffic between Monterey and Castroville. Traffic actually gets better on the section of Highway 1 that has 3 lanes. As one is driving from Monterey to Marina, slow down traffic speeds up as it enters the 3-lane section. MST also misrepresents the feasibility of the bus on shoulder charge because it has an agenda. Overpass structures don't get in the way of a bus on shoulder lane. There's plenty of room to widen Highway 1 to accommodate bus on shoulder. One underpass structure would need to be widened on the ocean side of Highway 1. The bus on shoulder alternative is cheaper than the SURF project. School buses could also operate on the bus on shoulder lane. They are typically stalled in morning rush hour traffic, but they aren't allowed on the SURF busway. A bus on shoulder lane would only need to be used 2 hours on a weekday rush hour and would only need to be established on southbound Highway 1. Meters synchronized with MSD buses can be placed on on-ramps to eliminate conflicts with oncoming traffic. MSD also owns land it wants to develop near the proposed 5th Street station. A lot of money is made from land development. There's a huge conflict of interest for MSD to be the lead agency. It's inappropriate. I think we're out of time.
Thank you. So just, I apologize, I didn't catch this earlier, directors into the committee, but when we are gonna talk about SURF, if there's comments and them on the agenda, so if you can please hold your comments until that time, I think it's most appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. But just to staff, I know that we have a website also that has a lot of the documents and information, factual information in regards to MST. So I
that is incorrect information, and it needs to be taken down because we all know now that the 2 uses can't exist. According to the Coastal Commission, the California Transportation Commission, and it's misleading information.
please mute.
There we go. Thank you. That's the secret for my staff is point of order.
Thank you for that. So I was just saying to the public that we have a website that contains a lot of the information on the SURF project. And if there's not information there, please feel free to reach out to the team to get that information that is accurate and factual. So we'll move on to, I think the last hand that I saw raised was Karen Helms. Karen, and just as a reminder, if it's in regards to the SURF project, we do have that on as an item on the agenda. But if it's not, then please move forward.
Hello. I'm in a car, so if it's too much background noise, just delete, unmute or get rid of me. Anyway, I've lived in East Garrison since 2016, and to Shannon's comments on the HOA paying for bus service. I mean, I calculate a conservative estimate that community pays $8 to $10 million in property taxes annually. We pay sales tax. We live here. We spend money. And it just seems very unfair for the county to have one HOA, one community in all of Monterey County to personally fund a bus service. And again, to Shannon's comment, this needs to be open, and the builder strictly agreed to this for profit purposes and did not agree to it because of the best interest of the homeowners. That builder no longer is around, and Centuries since bought them, but this is a big concern to East Garrison. And I'd hate to have people selling because it just becomes too expensive to live there between the Belarus and increased HOA. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, and I don't think there's any other comments. Okay, I do see a hand up by Lawrence. Lawrence, if you can unmute yourself.
I just want to reiterate what Shannon has said. So it's very unusual for an HOA to be responsible for costs for transportation. So I'm not sure if that's something that's being looked into.
Thank you, Lawrence. And so for the staff, because I know this is, I believe this is the second time we've heard this under public comments, if you can just respond.
Yeah, staff will have an item on your agenda for July. We felt this agenda was too full already. So we did have this planned for the July agenda, and we'll bring your board an update to hear it. So for our July meeting, we'll be able to discuss it, provide you more of the facts and the history of how we got to where we are today.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, so with that, I know that Shannon still has her hand up, but Shannon, we've already, unless it's a different comment other than what's already been noted under the HOA and East Garrison. Okay.
I think she's just over her head.
So
No, it's not. So thank you for adding this to the agenda. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Shannon. So this will be added to the agenda for July for our July board meeting. So thank you. With that, we're going to close our public comment period, and thank you everyone for speaking. I think it's important to note that the directors do take the comments from the public seriously, and that we do listen to the public and try to make sure that their concerns are addressed. So with that, we will move on then to our next item of business, which is our consent agenda. And we have nine items on the consent agenda. So I'll start with any directors wish to pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion or comment. Director Worthy?
3-6.
3-6. Okay, any other directors?
Yeah, I wanted to talk
3-6.
about 3-6 as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, and with that, I will take it out to the members of the public. If any members of the public wish to pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion or comment. And I'm not seeing any here in our boardroom. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay. Okay, so with that, directors, I will entertain a motion to approve items 3-1 through 3-9 with the exception of 3-6.
Second.
Okay, so I have Director Barrera and second by Director Emilio. Okay. Gotcha.
This is how we roll.
This is how we roll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any of
Madam Chair, you need to do this as a roll call vote.
Director, yes, thank you for the reminder. So it has to be a roll call vote as we have a director that's joining us remotely.
Okay, Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Shirley,
Yes.
Director Worthy,
Yes.
Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Fisher,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Emilio,
Aye.
Director Barrera,
Yes.
Director Carbone,
Yes.
Director Pacheco.
Yes.
Director Velasquez
Yes,
and Director Lay.
Aye.
And we can see him.
yes, and he's visible. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Okay, so, yes, so Director Alejo is visible, for all of us to see. So with that, the motion, carries unanimously. So we'll move on to, discussion on 3-6, and I will turn it over to Director Worthy and then Director Barrera.
Okay, my question is strictly informational. I know we've had this discussion about the battery buses, but I want to know what the infrastructure policy is at this point. Do we have something lined up? How is it all going to come into effect in the future?
Sure. So as of today, Norm Tuitavuki, Chief Operating Officer. So as of today, our plans are to procure and install an additional 9 chargers. That'll bring our total to, let me think about this, 3, 4, 5, 14 chargers in total. So we'll have more than enough chargers to operate, maintain, and charge the 13th electric bus. This is the 13th electric bus. Yeah.
Okay, so my other question would be, so when the buses are out driving, you have to figure out how long the battery lasts, correct? So everyone that's done has to know how many miles they're gonna go and all of that, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're actually working on getting some information, some quotes from vendors to help us reestablish and re-look at our rollout plan. So a couple of years ago, this board adopted a rollout plan, and it talked about, discussed, reviewed all the things required to operate zero emission buses with the information that we had at that time. As of today, there's information that's going to be coming to light that shows that electric buses now are getting up to 300 miles of range or more. And so what that new information means, we have to go back out, look at our rollout plan again to see whether or not we can make it with electric buses, more electric buses, or if the shift to hydrogen is still something that we need to seek after. So that's part of the plan over the next couple of months. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Director Woody.
Okay.
Director Burger?
Yeah, thank you. You know, with this expensive requirement from the state, you being a professional, I know that we're talking about one bus is gonna be retired. And it's just, the lifespan of these electric buses, how do you see the productivity or, just sometimes I know there's mandates, but government wastes money, I'm gonna say that. How do you see this effectiveness, not only for MST, but the service to the customer?
So speaking to the buses itself,
Yes.
that's yet to be told. We
Yes.
do have
Exactly.
4 buses that are in operation now, 2 buses that came into operation about 2017, 2018. We're seeing no battery or very little battery degradation on those 2 specific buses. Those 2 specific buses, we haven't had any major showstoppers. We're different than other peers that I work with, other colleagues. They've had some experiences that are not compared to ours. Keep in mind, we have a very nice climate here. Right, easy to operate, not a whole lot of pull on the power to operate our air conditioning or even our heaters and things like that. So our operating environment is different. We also have 2 battery electric buses that came into service in 2021. So we're 3 years in to the 12-year life of the bus. These buses are meant to be in operation for 12 years before we can put them to the end of use. So as of today, we're operating okay. The technology is getting better. And then the way that the bus manufacturers are putting these buses together, they're getting more light, right? They're lightening their overall weight so they can add more battery pack to that. And so the battery, so the buses that we're getting next fall are going to be 696 kilowatt hours of battery compared to 400 and some odd. I think it's 444 is what we have right now. So almost a 50% increase in the amount of battery that we have on board. But for now, we believe, just in our experience, they're operating okay. They're operating.
As you say, as technology gets better, do you think the price will come a little bit lower?
That was the intent, but it's not happening. It's not happening yet. Yeah. So I know, Carl did some work on this as well with the innovative clean transit regulation through the California Air Resources Board, and the vision was that the more buses we buy, right, the cheaper the buses are supposed to be getting, but that's not happened yet. So
Thank you.
I can safely say that diesel engine technology is over 100 years old. And in my 30 years, I've never seen the price of a diesel bus go down.
Oh.
So we've talked to our partners at the Air Resources Board about their mandate and the fact that their claims that prices would come down, that range would increase, that adoption would follow nationwide. It's not occurring as quickly as they thought it would when the rule was adopted. They seem disinclined to accept our invitation to them to pause the regulation until market conditions more closely match what the conditions were expected to be. So in the state of California, we're continuing to move forward, although I was, as Norm said, deeply involved in the writing of the regulation. There is a clause in there that a governing board can make a request to be relieved of the mandate. But it has to be approved by the Air Resources Board. That request has to be, so there is an opportunity. No one's moved forward with that yet. No one wants to be the first one to ask, but there is a clause in there.
Hey, read the sign.
Question.
That's the way we roll.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Director Ferrer, and thank you for your comments. Director Williams and then Director Fisher.
Yeah, just a quick question on that, because the mandate was pushed again, correct? Because it wasn't at 2030 and now it's 2040. Am I wrong on that?
It's, as far as I know, 2040, Norm, do you recall there being a 2030? I know some operators
Yeah,
move
so
quicker.
There's a couple of things. So 2028 is the last year that we can purchase. Let me think about that. It's either 2027 or effective 2028. We can no longer purchase internal combustion engine buses. 2030 is the goal of the state to move all, I think it's 2030 or 2035 for regular passenger vehicles. Yeah, don't quote me on that.
That's where I
2030.
got my confusion. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
2040 is
Thank
for
you for
us.
the clarification.
Yeah, Director Fisher.
Yeah, just a remark, and I already spoke with Carl that I happened to sit in an airplane 10 hours next to somebody from the Netherlands who works at the only bus manufacturing company in the Netherlands, and the buses, electric buses there are a little more than half the price that they're here. So I don't know, and Carl can say more about what causes this price difference. So
Yeah.
It's California.
Director, yeah, California. Director LeBlanc.
It's like
Just something for the board to consider. I think there could be a point where this board needs to authorize that section in the law, and not just because of the cost. It is also, where are the supplies for the batteries coming from? How are they being procured? Look, a lot of these are happening under slave labor conditions. They're using children. And that's why I would encourage the agency and this board never to put hydrogen off the table, that we have control over the whole process and who's involved in it. So I have other concerns when it comes to the battery technology and the ability to put enough in place and where those minerals are coming from. And I won't belabor this, but I have a real issue with mandating when we know it's being on the back of some of the poorest individuals in the world and on children themselves under harsh conditions. And our state mandating something without acknowledging how that's going to happen and how this mandate would be put in force and put in place without it being under civilized countries or just the United States.
Thank you, Director LeBar. So I think we have a lot of discussion as we're moving forward, and I think the next 2 years for this board is going to be really instrumental, because there is a lot of discussion in terms of how we're going to meet those mandates for 2040. And obviously, if there's an infrastructure requirement, that has to be now, right? And we know anything takes 5 to 10 years to be able to implement. And so I think we have to be looking at that, and also looking at the policies that we want to institute in regards to that. We know that now I believe there's only one bus manufacturer two in California.
Oh, only one in California,
Only one
two in the
California
country.
and 2 in the country. So, I mean, I think that's also going to be an issue, plus looking at where we're sourcing these materials from. And I think the board has, a good point to be able to come back and look at policies set in place to be able to institute, hey, if we're going to move forward with these mandates, we also want to be conscious. We have obviously a change of model that we said we want to be kind to our people, to planet, and to our performance, and all that has to be taken into consideration as we're trying to meet the mandates from the state, and looking at, the unrealisticness of it, or, how is this really going to roll out, and do we really have everything needed in place to be able to do it? And it doesn't seem it doesn't seem from this vantage point right now that everything is set in place to be able to meet those mandates. So, you know, good discussion. Thank you, board members. I think it's something that we, you know, this is important discussion to be able to entertain as we set our policies for the next couple of years as a board. So with that, then if there's no further discussion, I will, do I need to take it out to the public?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take it out to the public. Now, if there's any comments on item 3-6, and I do see there is a hand raised by the last number is 2837. If you can unmute yourself. 2837.
You're unmuted.
Brian Rosen here. There's a lot of greenwashing going on about electric vehicle technology. It still is pretty bad. A lot of, like what the supervisor said, there's a lot of mining and so forth, slave labor, and the pollution has to be produced somewhere. So the greenwashing is not only going on by the government and the corporations, it's also going on too much by MST and the promotion of electric vehicle technology. I'm not saying it might not be better than the regular diesel buses, but there still are a lot of problems and we don't need any greenwashing. And that's the end of this comment, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Logan.
Rosen.
Rosen, sorry, Rosen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other, I don't think I see any other hands raised. Okay, seeing none, then I will bring it back to the board for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second, Director Lamar and Director Smith. Roll call.
Okay.
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Director Worthy?
Yes.
Director LeVar?
Aye.
Director Fisher?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Emilio?
Yes.
Director Barrera?
Yes.
Director Carbone?
Yes.
Director Pacheco?
Yes.
Director Velasquez?
Yes.
And Director Ali.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passed.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next item of business, which is public hearing. We have one public hearing for today, and that's a fiscal year 2025-2026 operating and capital budget. This is on page 49 of your budget, and I will turn it over to Ms. Lisa Reinheimer to walk us to. So we're going to receive the presentation on the 2025-26 operating and capital budget. We're going to open it up to conduct a public hearing for comments on the operating capital budget. And we're going to close the public hearing. We're going to bring it back for discussion by the directors and then adoption of the budget and approval of the resolution, authorizing the filling of the federal grant applications and authorizing staff to apply to the Transportation Agency for Monterey County for Transportation Development Act, local transportation funds and straight transit assistance for fiscal year 2025. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lisa Reinheimer to receive the presentation.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I do have a PowerPoint if the fantastic folks in the back room, thank you. So before I get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to Andrea Williams. She's our finance manager back there who helps and leads the efforts in putting together this budget. A lot of information, and she also has help from all of the staff in the various different departments guiding her in terms of efforts that we'll be expending over the next year. We are required as MST to conduct a public hearing for the annual adoption of the budget for our bylaws and provide notices in the local newspapers 15 days in advance of this hearing. And those were provided at the end of May. Next slide, please. So I'll go through the year-end forecast, the operating budget priorities for this coming year, as well as the operating budget revenues and expenses, talk about service operations highlights and the economic impact of MST in our community, and then conclude with the 2025 capital improvement program. Next slide. So at the end of this current fiscal year, we anticipate a $46.3 million unrestricted reserve, and that's as of June 30th, later on this month, and does not include the capital program. We are less in surplus than we were last year, largely due to onboarding of additional coach operators to operate our service. Next slide. So our priorities are to maximize our revenues, including we are increasing the advertising rates per your board's approval last month, starting July 1st. We obviously want to promote transit services, get people off the roads and into transit, seek opportunities for our capital program so that we're minimizing the use of general fund dollars to support the capital program, continue the fares at the existing rates. We're not proposing to increase fares at this time. Foster and maintain our partnerships with CSUMB, Hartnell, MPC, Monterey Trolley, City of Monterey, etc. Operate our better bus network at your board adopted levels of the medium scenario and continue stable levels of staffing. So next slide, we'll get into a little bit more detail in terms of the revenues. We anticipate $56.4 million of revenue under our general programs that are not new to us. $4.4 million would be from the SB 125 funding, which is being delayed by the state. So that'll round up our revenues that we need for operating the budget on the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So in terms of the expense side, I divided it out into labor and benefits, services, fuels, fuel parts, supplies, utilities, insurance, leases, etc. Purchase transportation, and all those expenses in FY25 meet the revenues anticipated from the previous slide. We are, seeing increases in sort of general broad categories of insurance and fuels, parts, etc. And in terms of purchase transportation, that'll be another subject later on the agenda. So we'll get into the details there. Next slide. So again, we'll be operating the medium scenario of the Better Bus Network. We are implementing circulator services in Soledad and Gonzales. Cross my fingers later on in this current year, calendar year, by the end of 2024. We currently have an invitation for bids out for construction. So that will be due later on this month. And then with Greenfield, we're working on the design of the bus stop specifically in Greenfield. So we are making progress. We have a new 10-year trolley contract with the city of Monterey to provide trolley services, and it is now trolley time. So hopefully people who come to the peninsula can take a free ride on the trolley, and it's part of the experience. So thank you, Mr. Smith, for your continued support. Trolley service.
And it's battery operated, by the way. Right? Don't we have one that's?
We do, but it's unreliable, and it was a pilot, and it cost too much to maintain. So unfortunately, right now we're operating diesel, although the same manufacturer is working on a battery electric vehicle.
100% renewable biofuel.
There we go.
We don't use diesel. Just FYI.
That's true. That is true. Okay, thank you. Let's see. We'll continue our school pass program. We have a van pool program. Subsidized van pool program will continue. The free fare zone in Pajaro through December 2024 at the request of the supervisor for the county, Luis Lejo, thank you. And then we're also launching a BOGO, buy one, get one free program with using the last of our CARES Act funding. So we'll be doing some promotional efforts starting in July, and our marketing manager will be leading up those efforts. Next slide. So this was a request of Director Labar a number of years ago. What is the impact of MST services and what we provide to our communities, just in general. And the American Public Transportation Association has an economic impact calculator that uses Monterey County conditions to calculate that, and that's what I used here. So of the, 60 some odd million plus the, $47 million capital budget, we're injecting $166 million into our economy. And if you think about it this way, we've got our drivers here locally, they're spending their dollars at the grocery store, at the movies, or the whatever. And so then the parts and fuel suppliers, et cetera, you can easily come up with $166 million of local economic impact. And then finally, on the capital improvement program side of things, on the next slide, our major capital projects in FY25 are the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit Project, the Salinas Operations and Maintenance Facility Project, our zero emission vehicles. We just talked about those charging units, paratransit vehicle replacements, and other miscellaneous facilities, IT, other sport equipment types of items, totaling $46.7 million of funded. We have a $26.5 million unfunded amount that we would, if we get the money, we can certainly move them forward, but otherwise they'll be rolled over into the next year and try to fund them the following year. So with that, I'll stop there and answer any questions if you have them, and I've got support behind me if there are detailed questions.
Okay, so thank you so much, Lisa, for that. So directors, can I take it out to the public first to see if there's any questions from the public, and then bring it back to the directors for questions? So with that, then I will open up the public comment at 10:46. And I will take it out to the public, any public members that are joining us here in our chambers that like to have questions or comments on the proposed budget. Okay, seeing none in our chambers, I will take it out to those that are joining us via Zoom. If there's any comments from our public that's joining us today. Okay, and I see no hands raised, just double checking. Okay, so I will close the public comment period at 10:47. And I will bring it back then to the directors for this.
Be a record.
Okay, Director Worthy.
Okay, my question is related to the deficit in the state of California. Does that have an impact on the funding that we have been allocated? I know right now they're still looking that over and trying to figure out where the money has gone and all that sort of thing, but I just wondered if it's going to affect transportation.
So Carl, feel free to jump in too, but we seem to be largely unscathed except for that SB 125 funding, which is being delayed by 2 months, 3 months, something along those lines. We can use our other funding in the meantime, but with, capital projects that need to advance, a delay in 2 months, could certainly have an impact. If it goes beyond the 2 months, it could be problematic for us with relation to the SURF project, because the transportation agency for Monterey County had added some additional funding for the SURF project with the SB 125 funding that was sort of a swap between the SB 125 funding and their Measure X funding. So if that SB 125 funding doesn't come in, that delays the Measure X funding for us, which we need to be able to show our funding partners, both at the state and the federal level, that we have all the funding we needed before we can go into construction. We need to get a small starts grant agreement from the FTA, and we need to get an allocation from the California Transportation Commission for the $25 million of the transit and intercity rail capital program funding. So it's unfortunately a very simple question and a very complex answer.
Right. Which I assumed. I appreciate. Yeah.
I would just say, as it stands with the Speaker Rivas, and the Senate has proposed a alternate alternative budget to the governor. And that would hold us largely unscathed and would hopefully, the Speaker Rivas is very aware of our particular issue. And so I think that solution, if the governor adopts it, will leave us in good stead and standing with the a caveat that in future years, a couple years out, some of the SB 125 funding for the longer term projects that TAMC is looking at, those monies may be delayed by an additional year. And I don't have all the fiscal years in my head, but I do know it's what they're looking at. It's, you know, how budgets are passed in governmental associations. They're pushing the shells around in future years to make it all look like it balances this year. I don't quite understand, as you know, having a finance and accounting background doesn't make me qualified to understand how governments do this. But anyway, I'm told that it all balances out in the end. So we're good.
To trust.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Worthy. Any additional questions, Director Bishop?
Yes, I have a question. It was great to see that circulator service will be added in Greenfield, Soledad, and Gonzales. Just a general question, what is the best procedure for cities to request to look into adding service within the city?
I would say meet with myself and Carl and share the ideas and we'll see what we can do.
Because I know one council member and a resident of Marina have met with you and
yes.
So was that the best way to do that, to handle that?
I think so. Yeah, that was not a problem. We met with them several months ago and took their suggestions to heart and took the changes to the Mobility Advisory Committee. We think we can implement them later on this Labor Day weekend, rerouting one of our existing lines to be able to better serve the area of Rain Dollar, which was the issue.
Okay, so it is being looked into.
Yes.
Yeah, looked into it, plan of action for Labor Day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
No,
you,
that's all right.
Director Bishop. Any? Director Shirley?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. So this year we're going to be operating in a deficit, but we've got the unrestricted cash to cover that. So I'm just wondering if we have a 5-year projected outlook to see what changes we might need to make in the future.
Right. We have that in the full budget, which I don't have a copy of with me at the moment. We are not operating in a deficit with the addition of the SB 125 funding. We'll be using that funding for until our allotment has run out, which will be 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And then after that, we project, what was it, 2029 was about the time when we really need to start thinking about, okay, well, how are we going to make this whole thing work? Is there a federal funding bill that's coming up within that time frame?
Should be.
So we'll be making those asks of our federal government as well in terms of the next iteration of the infrastructure law.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, directors, any other questions? Okay, I just have one final question. So Lisa, I know that no project. So I know that obviously the SURF is one of the major projects that we have moving forward, but also the Salinas transit facilities. So is that part of the unfunded project list, or do we have with what we have in the operating budget, in the capital budget, funding set aside for the Salinas transit?
So for the Salinas Transit Operations and Maintenance Facility, we have, we're still in the early stages of planning what that facility will look like. And we have funding set aside through the environmental and preliminary design. After that, there's still some Measure X funding available for Salinas Valley facilities. And then we're going to have to really hit the ground with grant applications and funding opportunities to actually make that project work.
So we'll need to look at the construction portion of it.
Yes, construction and right-of-way acquisition.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, directors, if there's no additional comments on the on this item, then I would entertain a motion to adopt fiscal year 2025. I need a motion to adopt fiscal year 2025-2026 operating capital budget. And then also D&E, which is approved. Can we take all of those in one motion?
Yes, you can.
Okay, and then that would be the inclusion of approval of the resolution 2024 authorizing the filing of federal grant applications and authorizing staff to apply to the Transportation Agency for Monterey County for Transportation Development Act, local transportation funds and state transit assistance for
So
fiscal.
moved.
Okay,
I
so.
heard a motion from Alejo.
Motion from Director Alejo.
Second.
Second from Director, the second from Vice Chair Vice Chair Carbone.
What commission, what meeting are we at?
Well, I'm trying to keep it straight in my head, so, okay, so we have a motion on the floor, Director Alejo, second by Vice Chair Carbone, if we can get a roll call, please.
Director Barron.
Yes.
Director Shirley.
Yes.
Director Worthy.
Yes.
Director Labar.
Aye.
Director Ishner. Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Amelia.
Yes.
Director Barrera.
Yes.
Director Carbone.
Yes.
Director Pacheco.
Yes.
Director Velasquez.
Yes.
And Director Leyva.
Aye.
The motion passed.
Okay, so thank you, directors for that. So we have, we'll move on to the action items, but before I just want to make sure, because I see a hand up, we did close a public comment period. So just to our public, to make sure, I want to be very, very respectful that we're allowing for public comment when the public comment time is appropriate. So I just want to make sure, I'm gonna make sure that I emphasize that again to a public when it's open for the public comment period. But public comments were already closed on this specific hearing. Okay, so we do have a request. I know that we had a gentleman that just arrived and he missed the public comment period, but want to make sure, again, we're here to hear and listen to our public because it's really important for us as an agency and us as directors. So I believe there was a public comment that needed to be made. And directors, if you're okay with that, I want to allow for that public comment. Okay.
You bet.
So, Mr. Vela?
Good morning, my name is Alberto Villa. I think so. I have one. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the last time I come here. Everything's working very well with my appointment. Every 2 weeks I go to Chomp. So thank you so much for the all helpful, and everything is fine in my through my transportation date. The other concern I have it is still the same problem again. I last Tuesday I make last Tuesday I make a reservation for thank you for Sunday at the church. When I tell the date and time, one man, I don't remember if it's 2 men. One is Ricardo. He said to me, well, I don't have a time, the time you have it. Only I have 10. For some reason, every time when I spoke with him, he have like give me some difficulties for my my concern or the when I make one reservation for a specific time. So I decide he give me on 11. So I decide call next day. Sorry, I decide to call Saturday again. And when I call Saturday, I spoke with Alicia, very helpful, very nice person with me. And I have a Sunday, I am. So I wonder, I don't know why I had this problem specific with this person. I don't understand. Number one. Number two, can can I have the phone number for the representative of the MSC in the city of Greenfield, please? Or the business card? Because I have one more concern about the service. We need more cars, more people, because many people in one car. Sometimes I arrive in my home 3 hours late when I take the bus. It's very difficult. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your help. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll make sure that staff was taking your concerns and that they contact you, and then also provide you with Director Rodriguez's phone number. I know she was here last time and I believe she did give that, but we'll make sure you have that as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, directors, for that. So we then will move on now to our action items, and we have 5 of those for today. So we have 5 and we have an hour. Want to get through everything. So we'll start with receiving an update on the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project, and I'll turn this over to Ms. Lisa Reinheimer, and this is on page 65. So just as a reminder to our public and to our directors that we continue, the board did request that we continue to get an update on the Surf project, and this is part of our monthly updates to the board and to the public.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I will try to be brief, although there has been a lot that has happened since the last meeting. After your board meeting last time, the California Coastal Commission staff sent a letter to the California Transportation Commission, as well as the California Public Utilities Commission about 2 issues. One regarding Proposition 116, which your board had talked about last time. In response, the MST chair and the TMC board chair provided a letter, which was also sent to your board, concluding that the Surf project is an eligible use of Proposition 116 and in the TMC owned rail corridor. MST Council also provided an opinion as such. CPUC involvement is when there is potential train service and crossings, but this railroad has been decommissioned. It's not part of the national network. It is not part of the project. This was provided to the California Coastal Commission in July of 2022 and further reiterated recently in another email from CPUC staff to the Coastal Commission. It was also provided in the 800 and some odd pages of application materials that we provided to the California Coastal Commission between March of last year and February of this year. The second update I wanted to provide is that the TMC Rail Policy Committee recommended to TMC that they approve a long-term use agreement with MST for providing the Surf Busway operations. That should go to the TMC board meeting later on this month. The City of Marina Council last week upheld MST's coastal development permit application and denied the appeal. And so that will be going to the information about that action will be going to the California Coastal Commission 10 days, after which an individual may appeal that decision to the California Coastal Commission. We believe that the Coastal Commission should be receiving that packet of information from City of Marina shortly. It was sent on June 6th. Regarding Sand City Coastal Development Permit, we went to the Development Review Committee in late May, and the committee recommended that the City Council approve a coastal development permit as well as a tree removal permit for the portions which are located within Sand City. There is an emerging issue with the proposed conditions of approval, and we're trying to work those issues out with the city manager. They are asking that MST construct and or pay for an additional lane out of the private driveway of the Costco parking lot, which is not an allowable use of MST funding as it relates to the CEQA exemption that explicitly states that any work with respect to the BRT system has to be on existing public rights of way for bus operations. So we're working with the city on that. Obviously, Costco is private driveway, private use, and does not meet our qualifications for the SURF project. About the budget, the Federal Transit Administration reviewed our 95% design milestone and reviewed it for risk, and they are requiring MST to add $1.1 million of additional contingency to our budget. And last week also, the Regional Park District approved an memorandum of agreement for 2.89 acres of mitigation required as part of our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biological opinion as it relates to threatened or endangered species, and the place where that restoration activity will occur is the Marina Dunes State Park. So that was good news. We are continuing to receive letters of support for the coastal development permit, the last of which was from the Monterey Mayors Association, and we'll be continuing to push our public relations advocacy efforts as we get closer and closer to the Coastal Commission hearing date, which we anticipate in September. And then finally, we met with the Coastal Commission Executive Director and her staff last week on Zoom. Carl, I'll let you handle the majority of this, but as part of what we did with the Coastal Commission was we analyzed 12 different alternatives, both on highway and off highway alternatives at a cost of $330,000 or more. And all on highway alternatives that they asked us to look at are not supported by Caltrans, who is the owner operator of the highway system. So that was a fatal flaw. And then the bus on shoulder keeps popping up as a viable option. It is not a viable option. It has the same fatal flaw of on highway system that Caltrans does not support. It doesn't promote our services and operations the way we need it to. And the California Highway Patrol has flat out come across the entire state as not supporting bus on shoulder operations for significant safety concerns. So as far as we're concerned, a bus on shoulder operation is a no-go for those reasons. So I wanted to point that out because it keeps coming up in public meetings, but it's not an option. And then Carl, I don't know if you wanted to further elaborate on our coastal commission.
Just that we, through the efforts of Senator John Laird, he brokered a meeting. We've been trying for years to get someone from coastal outside of the regional office to either talk to us or show up on site for a visit. Senator Laird was finally able to convince the Dr. Kate Hucklebridge to meet with us. And during this meeting, we reframed how we talk about the service to coastal, speaking in terms that in policy, broad policy objectives that the Coastal Commission has passed, indicating where they want to see their efforts. And those are in areas of coastal access, environmental justice, global climate change, sea level rise, protecting coastal resources and affordable housing are these pillars. And we were able to, I think, show very clearly how this project supports all of those goals of the Coastal Commission. And it's our hope that the commissioners will want to support a project that helps them achieve the goals that they themselves said they want to achieve. I think the thing that landed probably the closest, or we got the most interest from Dr. Hucklebridge, was on the slide that showed the 12 alternatives that we reviewed. It was abundantly clear to us that was the first time she had seen that list, because there had been letters put out by her staff saying that MST staff review, did not look at alternatives. And so she wanted a specific copy of that slide to talk with her staff about. She did commit to coming out on site to see the project herself. I've sent an invitation and a reminder of that invitation last week. I've not received a response back about when that will occur. I'm hoping it'll occur within the next week or so. There's a meeting in Morro Bay later this week. I may take the drive down and do another in-person invitation, perhaps in front of her chair, see if that has any impact. Includes my
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you, Carl, for that. And We all have a copy of this. correct?
Yes, you do.
Yes. Thank you for that, and thank you for providing that. Okay, Lisa, any, that will conclude with the update. So I'll open it up. Let me open it up to the public first, and then I'll come back to the directors. Any members of the public have comments on the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project updates that are joining us here in our chambers? Being none, those that are joining us via Zoom. Yes. Put on my screen here. Okay, I see no hand raised.
Okay.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the directors, and I think Director Labar, you have a question or?
Just a comment, I really appreciate the presentation and the handout. I just wanted to also just reiterate, some of the funding for the SURF project came from Measure X. And Measure X, when that went out to the public for approval, SURF project was one of those included projects. So additionally, the public has spoken on this resoundingly as something they wanted to see.
Thank you for that comment, Director Labar. Any additional comments, Dr. Smith?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to point out to the public that may be still watching this, on page 22 has the analysis and conclusion. It has an outstanding chart to be able to address what Lisa, you brought up. Many of the speakers we hear frequently, and we also hear them at the City Council of Monterey and many other cities, I'm sure. But this really speaks to the point of why we're where we are and why we have eliminated the other options that we continually hear. So as part of the public outreach and education, where can we point people to see this on our website? Because I want to continually point to this chart and this document so people will see.
Right, so thank you for that. So that is work in progress at the moment. This is an example of what we're going to be putting up there. I would say like immediately, if people wanted to sift through the 800 some odd pages that we submitted to the California Coastal Commission, it's on our website.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're putting together a summary, an executive summary with this kind of information as like a 1-2 pager type.
Slide.
Excellent.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So maybe what we could do also, because we have slide 22 that talks about the analysis conclusion and what was done. So that would be something that if we could do that.
Yes.
Put it up there. So we have that
Yeah.
with, looking at the work in progress to make sure that we have, this is a really good document, by the way,
Yeah.
to be able to look at all of what we've been talking about. And also, as Director Smith said, with some of the comments that we heard today, that we've heard in the past, I think this will be a really good document to.
Yeah, yeah, and under the heading of until we are in construction and even after, we'll be in the business of public education and outreach. So it's really important that we continue to say the consistent message, which this is an excellent document to help us do that. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Chair. If it could be sent to us, the document itself, and then that way we can forward it to our council members and our city staff, just so they can look at it too, because I think it is a good document. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, any other comments? Okay, so we have closed the public comment period, but I do want to just make a really quick comment on Senator John Laird's earmark. I know that the legislature is fighting hard to keep all the earmarks that have been allocated, but I want to make sure that we already have all of the contracts that are needed for us to be able to make sure that that's already been allocated to us, but it's been procured or,
Yes, it's in the bank.
Okay, perfect. Good. Thank you. Good. I won't worry about it.
It's in the bank earning interest.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, then we will close. We will move on. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that. We'll move on to our next item of business. And that is ratify the MOU between MSTA and MST and provide the same benefits to non-representative confidential employees. And I'll turn this over to Kelly Halkin, and this is on page 73 of your report.
Kelly Halkin, Director of Human Resources and Risk. I'm here before you to discuss ratifying and agreeing to the memorandum of understanding that is between MST and Monterey Salinas Transit Employees Association. Currently the MOU is set to expire on June 30th of 2024. In February of this year, the board gave us direction, the negotiating team, to meet with representatives from MSTA to negotiate the terms of a new MOU. We were able to reach a tentative agreement on April 19th of 2024, and the MSTA membership ratified the tentative agreement on May 3rd of 2024. Some of the highlights of the agreement is that the MST and MSTA agreed to a COLA increase of 4, 3, 3.5, and 3 over a 3-year period. The length of the agreement again is 3 years, as well as adding an additional holiday for Juneteenth and helping toward the contribution of dental and vision insurance. Again, I just want to reiterate, this is a 3-year length contract set to expire. If we agree, if you ratify, it'll set to expire on June 30th of 2027. At this point, staff is recommending for approval of the memorandum of understanding between MSTA and MST.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for always making this process look easy. So let me take it out to the public. If there's any public comments on item 5-2, any of those that are joining us here in our chamber. Seeing none, then taking that out to the public that is joining us via Zoom. Any comments from those that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, seeing none, then I will close the public comment portion and bring it back to the directors for discussion or a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Director LeBar and a second by Director Emilio. If we can get a roll call, please.
Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Shirley,
Yes.
Director Worthy.
Yes.
Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Fisher,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Emilio,
Yes.
Director Barrera.
Yes.
Director Carbone,
Yes.
Director Pacheco,
Yes.
Director Velasquez,
Yes.
and Director Alejo.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you. We really appreciate all of your work. Okay, so we'll move on now to item 5-3, receive report on Measure Q polling and research and provide direction. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Carlos Sidore, and it's on page 75 of everyone's packet.
Thank you, Chair. This came out as a result of our January strategic planning workshop, when we identified that our Measure Q measure that provides funding for mobility services for seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities via 1/8 of 1% sales tax will be expiring in another 5 years. So we have a couple of elections. We have the current election, we have the 26 and 28 elections, potentially look at a renewal of that measure. And so we put together a team of pollsters and other resources that are experts at these measures. As a matter of fact, we were able to competitively procure the services of virtually the entire team that worked on the initial 2014 measure. Some of them have gone off to form other organizations, other companies, and worked for other places. But ultimately, they put in competitive bids and retained the information from 2014, so we didn't have to start over. Next slide. Okay, next slide. There we go. Okay, so what was conducted was a multimodal survey. What that means is we did phone interviews, text and email surveying of 1,200 likely November 2024 voters between April 27th and May 5th, providing a margin of error of 2.8% for the full sample size, which is a pretty good sample size. Next slide. So what did it tell us? Probably not surprisingly. Next slide. Overall, when asked, are we on the right track or wrong track or don't know, overall, people are thinking we're in Monterey County on the wrong track, slightly greater than the right direction. So people are a little bit grumpy. Not surprising. Next slide. So when you break it down by ethnicity, between white, Latino, and Asian, and African American, we did not get a sample size that was something that we could, wasn't a sample size large enough for us to report on. You see in the Latino population a higher degree of dissatisfaction than among white and Hispanic, or white and Asian voters. That may be because primarily lower income, primarily have a burden of sales tax hit them harder. Next slide. Somewhat good news is that when you look at asking the ratings, how well is an agency doing, excellent, good, fair, or poor, if you take the total percentage of excellent and good and subtract the fair and poor, Monterey Salinas Transit is rating higher than any of the other institutions that we talked about. So we're not doing as well as we did in 2014. People are a little grumpier now than they were 10 years ago. We're just higher than performance rating for CAMSI, the Board of Supervisors, and your own local city councils right now are underwater by 25 on that. So next slide. Not surprisingly, you're the first line of defense. You're the easiest folks for people to get to. So I think it's where you're. I think when times are good, you bear the fruit of that. When times are bad, it goes the other way. So how does it look for MST funding? Next slide. So we looked at we looked at a couple different options. We looked at 3 different options. Our concurrent sales tax, renewing the sales tax. We looked at a renewal plus an additional 1/8 of a cent for general MST purposes. So the renewal would be just for current Measure Q. An additional 1/8 of a cent would be allow us to do some of these unfunded mandates like battery electric buses, or perhaps offering, there's been a number of legislative pushes for free transit all the way around. And so we wanted to poll on what would that look like if we added an additional 1/8. And then we also looked at, well, what if we went outside of a sales tax measure? What other options do we have? We looked at TOTs. We can't do that. We're not eligible to put a TOT in place as a non-land use jurisdiction. So we looked at a property tax alternative. For the just straight renewal, we're very strong. Without leaners, we're at 75%, definitely or probably yes, and with leaning 81%. So we're in a very strong position. If we were to go out and just place this ballot out, just a straight up renewal, we're pretty confident that that would pass with the 2/3 majority required. Next slide. Oh, back slide. And back another slide. There we go. Here's the 1/8 and an 1/8. So renew Measure Q and then add another 1/8. The issue with this is we would only be able to do a county-wide measure. And the county, there are some of your jurisdictions with your local sales taxes and other taxes are at the statewide cap. So we are unable to just put something on the agenda. We would need to get legislation passed that would allow us, for specific transit purposes, allow a higher than that state cap. This was successfully done in Santa Cruz. Just this last legislative, Senator Laird did write legislation that passed that allows Santa Cruz County to put on a ballot measure an additional tax above the state mandated state ceiling. They haven't done it yet, but they have the authority to do it. So this would require us to do something like this if we wanted to pursue it. Without leaners, again, 68% above the 2/3, with leaners at 74%. Not as strong as a straight renewal, but enough that maybe something we should consider. Next slide. Support for a $65 parcel tax that would support the type of funding that we need. This is DOA. This is flatline. We never need to talk about this again, but I thought it was worthwhile for us in case anyone asked, what else can we do? There you go. Next slide.
Yeah.
So comparison of the measures, let's not even talk about the parcel tax, it's there, but there's just a graphic interpretation of it with leaners, without leaners. Next slide. So comparing that to where we were with in time, Measure Q tracking poll of 2014 was at 72%. Probably yes and definitely yes. The election, we know that everyone who voted for it was definitely yes, because they voted for it. That was 73%. A straight up renewal, we have slightly higher than we were in 2014 for 2024. So that's just for a straight up renewal. Next slide. So here's the interesting thing about our project. When you say transportation programs and tell a person we want transportation and mobility programs for seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities, they're immediately at 75%. When we tell them a little bit more, what that means is we actually start to lose a support. And then if there's a negative campaign, if someone decides to run a campaign against us, we come out at 66%, right at the 2/3. This is just for a straight up renewal under today's circumstances. So that is too close to call. And had this number come up at 72%, like we were at in 2014, after a negative campaign polling, I would have brought this out to the agenda a little bit earlier to you all and said, we need to, get this on the agenda. But at this point, at that close of a margin, I don't think staff doesn't recommend putting anything on this ballot measure. It's almost too late now anyway. Next slide. So quarter-cent renewal, we start out at 68%. Again, the more we talk about it, what it means, the less people are inclined to vote for it slightly. And then after a negative campaign, we drop below that required 2/3 majority. So, people like the concept of public transportation. When you start to talk specifics about what it does, you seem to lose interest. Next slide. Next slide. All right. Where is their drop off here? Republican women age 55 plus, as you can see. Interesting, Board of Supervisors District 1 was a high level of drop off between renewal versus a renewal plus an increase. So again, I think that has to do with income levels and who's the burden on low income people of these types of sales taxes. Next slide.
I did have a question on that one.
Yep.
I didn't understand why there was no information on Democrat women, Democrat ages, because it just shows like you assume that there's no drop off and.
That's a great question. That was the slide. I can follow up with that. I'll get back with you on that.
Offline information.
Yeah, that's maybe there wasn't drop off. I don't know. It could be. But we'll find out. Excellent question. Next slide.
And Carl, just on that,
Yeah.
so I know we only have the District 1 and District 5 Board of Suits, but did you pull all of the?
I think so. I think these were the significant drop off.
Oh, okay.
So that's all but I will follow up. That's a great question. I had an assumption that was just a significant, but I didn't ask the question, so I appreciate it. So here's interesting. I thought, what are the essential elements? What are the things that people most agree with when they're supporting it? Medical trips for veterans, trips for the elderly, trips for persons with disabilities. No surprise, Measure Q. That's what we found, and that's why Measure Q is what it was. Essential trips for people to get to those essential trips, and special fares for seniors, veterans, and disabilities. And again, bus stops for seniors. That is the top message that people respond to the greatest. On a 0 to 10, this is where the highest number of 10s are. Next slide. The middle messages, where people are enthusiastic but less enthusiastic. Providing service to working people, going to work. Student transportation is less important. And improving safety, preventing cuts to future service, and dealing with clean fuel and fuel efficient vehicles is a lower than the others. Next slide. The lowest tiered messages, giving us the least help, helping with traffic congestion, helping support tourism, helping to secure local funding to offset federal and state budget cuts, which was interesting. In 2014, that particular item rated much higher. Helping meet the 2040 mandate, high gas prices. Those were some of the lower, those measures that provided us the least amount of help. So if we're going to talk about these things, we want to talk mostly about those top tier messages and talk less about the tier 3 messages. That's the lessons here. Next slide.
One quick question. So just on the meaning of the numbers, I would imagine anything above a 5 is towards the positive.
Yeah.
Right? So did they provide, like, we really want to see something over 7.5 or?
I'd have to follow up.
That's it.
Positive messaging, next slide. So this is just more of the same. These are the statements that supporters have made about the proposal. Seniors, disabled, continuing services, veterans. Next slide. Less important, it's a cheaper alternative. There's it will avoid cutting services, and that there's an oversight committee is less important than those other messages. It's still important. And next slide. Least important, the rising costs of fuel, zero emissions is to our voters the least important thing.
Can we share that with the state?
This messaging will be shared if so. Part of this polling is required. But when I mentioned that Senator Laird did a measure for the Santa Cruz County, he first needed to see polling that there was support. So I think this polling shows overall their support to raise the cap. It's just going to be important what it is we talk about. Should he give us, should we be successful, how we talk about this in the future. And then we'll continue to monitor. Maybe this will become more, these things change over time. Next slide. Negative messaging. So a negative campaign, things that, raising taxes during a time of rising costs. There are other things that are more important. The least important negative message was this is taking money away from roads, which is, I think, interesting because over my timeline here, that has been a tool used against MST that, the more we spend on buses, the less we spend on roads. So next slide. So here's the executive support. Overall, we remain popular, especially for providing services to seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. We have strong support for renewing Measure Q. It polls higher today than when it passed in 2014. There's also strong support for an additional tax if we can get it through the legislature to allow for it. And a property tax is not worth talking about. So that's where we're at. Our next steps, next slide. We're going to monitor. Another reason not to be on this ballot is the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. Which could throw up in the air any sales tax measures that get passed this year around. There's some really wonky stuff. If you're not watching this, I encourage you to watch this and oppose measures that limit the ability for voters in state and local governments to fund services by making it harder. We'd ask your board to take that position. And then we're going to seek support for legislation to allow for increases of local revenue for transit use in Monterey County and continue to monitor for a future 2026 campaign. That's what we recommend at this point with this information. And I can share these slides with you. If you have a desire, I will forward that to you.
Yes, please.
Yes. Just send it all around.
Yes.
Okay, we'll get it out to you. I should have had it out to you in advance. I just ran out of time.
Well, thank you, Carol. And I just want to make on this one for the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. So I know we heard it last month when we went to the CTA conference in Sacramento. So I would, if I can recommend, maybe that's under the future agenda items that I can place it there to come back for a letter from the board.
Yeah.
This.
I think we could do that at the July meeting, ask for, or at our, and during our admin committee meeting, they act as your legislative policy body. We could actually put that as an opposed measure on them and also bring it to your full board if you full board wants to take an action on it, but it would be consistent with your planks of your existing legislative policy. We always say oppose things that make it harder for us to get money, support things that make it easier for us to get money. That's already there. But if we want to specifically take an action on it and make a statement, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Carl. So let me take it out to the public, before we come back for the, to the directors for comments. Any members of the public that are joining us here would like to make a comment on the presentation?
2837.
Okay, so none, and then any member.
2837 has a hand up.
Okay, so let me go to Zoom, 2837, if you can please unmute yourself. Wait, 37, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, Brian Rosen here. Yes, I want to make a comment. I thought I had my hand raised for the surf and I was 10 seconds too late and nobody would let me in. But I want to make a suggestion for a future agenda item that you actually have somebody read the letter from the Coastal Commission, which states that that project is absolutely non-coastal compliant and it absolutely precludes rail because for one reason, it uses up all the development potential of the dunes. You read that
You're gonna have to.
Coastal Commission letter word for word.
Because it's not the time to make a comment on this specific item. Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, then I will bring it back to the board for final comments, and I do see Director Labar, but Director Alejo has his hand up, so let me go to Director Alejo, who's joining us remotely, and then I'll come back to Director Labar.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just wanted to support your request that we take a position next month on the California Business Roundtable ballot proposition. It doesn't have a number yet. I think that's going to be designated in July, but I think it's important because it is going to really create a lot of difficulty for local governments in raising revenue to meet the core services that we provide to our communities. So I know it's being heard at the California Supreme Court. I believe they're supposed to rule by the end of June on it, whether it's going to remain on the ballot or not. But I think it's that important that we take a position because it could have an impact on this question of the Measure Q extension or the additional revenue requested perhaps requested at a future election cycle. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that there is some local governments considering a sales tax. The County of Monterey for one, but I think the city of Salinas, I think perhaps the city of King are also considering sales tax. So it would be it's going to be a crowded ballot measure. So it's just one of those other good reasons why perhaps for Measure Q, that it be brought up in 2026, considering this threatening ballot proposition, but also the other local measures that will be pursuing a sales tax. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Director Alejo, for those comments. Yes, so if we can agree then to come back on the July meeting for a position on a letter of position on that Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. Okay, any Director Labar?
Agree also on bringing that back the next meeting for that. I just wanted to point out that when you look at where we have had inflation over the last year and a half, these numbers are really good. And it'd be interesting. I would love to hear the opinion of the polling people referencing these numbers in consideration with what people have had to bear under inflation and the fact that they came back on public transit with these types of numbers. I honestly believe there's more support.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, Director Smith?
Yeah, I agree with the executive conclusions for a 2026 look. I would be interested in seeing a survey like this again in 2025. Maybe scaled down, maybe it's a renewal of this. I'm not sure what this cost was, but I think in the latter part of 2025, January 2026, looking at the numbers again, and then making the decision about 1/8 or an additional 1/8. But I think that the clear path to me was just a straight renewal. And I think that's the way to go. But I think a 2026 measure puts us in a place where it's certainly, it makes sense to the public when they're saying, well, why are we doing it? We're doing it because it's expiring. If we do it too soon, it doesn't make sense for some people to say, well, why are you doing it so soon? You have life left on the measures. So I think 2026 is the answer. But we, of course, have to talk about it then, whether we want to go with the straight renewal or additional. But I'd like to see the same kind of survey at the latter part of 2025, January 2026, because I think it's very helpful for us to make the decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. With that, we did have the vote.
No, this was a receive update.
Just to receive it.
Yep,
Okay.
I received update. You provided direction. I'm clear.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to
Property tax, right?
item 5.4, and this is to direct MST staff to publish a request for proposals to procure a transportation provider to operate MST's paratransit, on-call, and other fixed route public transit services. And with this, we have Norm.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Carbone. Thank you, members of our board. Thank you for bearing with us. We're in the home stretch of this board meeting. I appreciate you all hanging in there. This is an important and topic that we're discussing today. I'd like to direct your attention to page 77 and page 78 of your board packet. At last month's Board of Directors meeting, I informed you all that our contract transportation provider, MV Transportation, had requested an increase about 22% overall increase to their contract. As directed by you folks, following that meeting, we immediately got to work collecting and analyzing a bunch of different contracts for third-party public transportation providers. As a result, we gathered those contracts from California-based public transit agencies of various sizes and geographical locations here in California. The contracts that we had collected were similar in nature, but were very different and unique, mostly due to their physical location where the services are provided. More detail about our findings are included on page 78 if you'd like to take a look at that. Also, as a result of our work, we have prepared 3 options for this board's consideration and adoption. I'll go through those 3 options. Option number 1, which we do not recommend, is requesting or rejecting MV's request for the 22% increase. Rejecting the increase would most likely result in MV moving to terminate their existing contract, which is something that we're not prepared to do. We can make it happen if they go ahead and do that, but it's not something that we recommend. Option number 2, also, we do not recommend adopting this option. This would most likely, well, let me explain the option. That option is to accept their 22% request for an increase. That would most likely result in major procurement issues for MST, requiring legal guidance and assistance, and then also exposing MST to potential litigation from other providers that submitted proposals 2 years ago. Option number 3, this is our recommendation to you. We recommend that you rebid, you will give us well, let me say this, rebid the current contract through a new and updated request for a proposal. With your approval and adoption of this item, we will immediately get to work preparing the new RFP. This would allow MST to competitively bid out that work. MV can, if they desire, submit a proposal to the RFP. This is the safest and most logical option and that we're recommending. And I'll pause there to answer any questions that you may have before you take this action. I may ask Kevin Allshouse, our current contract services manager, or Marzette Henderson, the former contract services manager, to assist if I can't answer your question.
Thank you. Let me take it out to the public and then I'll bring it back to the director. So is there any members of the public that are joining us in our chambers that have any questions in regard to item 5-4? Okay, seeing none, any members of the public that have questions specifically to item 5-4? Okay, I see, just make sure. Okay, I see none, then I will close that public comment portion and bring it back to the directors for any questions. Director Barrera?
Yes, sir. I would like to hear from MV. I mean, you know, it's interesting. Every time MV we discuss MV, I get a number of phone calls afterwards and again, I don't know what to tell their drivers because sometimes they tell me they don't know anything, so that they're not being told anything, so I'd like to know about that.
So they're our contractor.
Yes.
So we don't communicate directly with
Okay.
their frontline employees. A lot of the procedures, processes, or rules, things like that we have for our frontline operators and mechanics are similar or the same that they have to follow. But as far as direct communication with the frontline, we don't have the ability to directly communicate with their frontline employees. We do have somebody in the audience, David Cox. I don't know if he can speak to that or if he's authorized to speak to that, but he's the general manager for the local operation.
So I think to our legal counsel, I think that's a question that's being asked, what's a line of communication to their employees? So I think that's a valid, and
I
that's
can handle that.
legal counsel tells me, no, but I think that's a valid question and a valid opportunity to provide a response.
As they are not our direct employees, it would be basically negotiating in bad faith. They're the employee, they're not our direct employees. We cannot have direct conversation with them. We cannot dictate their work rules because they are actually represented by Teamsters, as the drivers are. The mechanics and maintenance staff are represented by ATU, our local. So that it's really up to MV and those two unions to work together in their labor relations and to communicate with the workforce, not MST.
But Madam Chair, if you have a member of the public there, they can speak to you. You can't interrogate them. You can't pose questions to them, but they have an opportunity to address you if they choose to.
Who's that speaking?
Okay, so I think
He's talking
That was
about
David.
David.
Was that David?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was our, so, okay, so can we, so let me have the questions and then we can have him respond, because Director Pacheco, and do you have a question?
After Pacheco, but isn't that just a public member?
He's the general manager for MV. He's a management person.
Okay.
Just my simple question is, MV services have, over the years, have improved in services, and I know there's a lot of good employees. And the 22%, I believe I thought I saw or heard, has there been discussions of negotiating, working, talking to each other? Or is that just, they're saying 20%, 2%, take it or leave it?
Or you've had ongoing discussions for them to justify any sort of increase needs to have some justification with our use of federal funds. So we've asked them to open their books to us to find out why have they how did they come up to 22%? They are aware of our recommended action. Their president and CEO was made aware when this agenda was published. He was provided a copy of the same memo that you received, and we've not received any comment from them. So
No.
it seemed that they understand what our recommendation is, and they're not complaining about it.
Okay, so Director Pacheco, you're
That
good
was
with
it.
that? Okay, Director LeBar.
I was just gonna say, I mean, this is a fairly simple decision. You can't say accept, you can't deny, we need to go RFP, right? Otherwise, if we accept, all those people that didn't make it the first time, they will be suing us, right?
I would expect it.
I would too, so. And if that's the case, I'll make that motion to approve option 3.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Director LeBar and a second by Director Smith.
I have a question to the motion. We expect, so it sounds like MV has been sort of operating, negotiating or talking to us in good faith. So we don't expect them to, if we approve this right now, we don't expect them to give us 90 days notice and
I would
put
be
us on the
shocked.
spot.
I would be Yeah, no, I do not expect that. It has been in good faith and
So we're gonna go through this process and it's gonna be fine.
I believe so. That is I will say yes. Everything's going to be okay.
Can you define fine?
Norm has been going through that.
Yeah, we're gonna put out an RFP rather quickly, very quickly, right? Very quickly. Yeah, you'll probably see us in the next month or two, put that RFP on the street, so.
Got it. Director Smith, and then we'll go
Yeah.
out to the, for the motion.
And when, to continue, when, so given this timeline, like when, we put out the RFP, we get responses. Let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that MV is not the successful bidder. When will we expect the change to happen? Like at the end of the year or March or?
How about we develop the timeline
Okay.
with the milestones and then we'll bring that back to you
Thank
folks.
you.
Yeah.
With the you'll bring it back to us with the RFP, or do you not have to bring the RFP?
We generally don't bring the RFP
No.
back to the board. We get the authority to issue the RFP.
Yeah,
But I think it would be either in the operations committee or through via memo to the board. You're asking for a timeline. We'll provide you with a timeline and some communication within the packet so that you'll know it.
And one more question, given what is happening right now
Mhm.
with MV, like the situation we're in, just a few years after signing this contract. Do you see any changes to the RFP to sort of, to the language of the RFP to sort of guide us away from being in the same situation, 2 or 3 years from now?
They have suggested the way we look at variable and fixed costs within the contract.
Right.
We're taking that under consideration. I haven't said that's exactly how we're going to do it. We want to take a look at, I'd like to take a look at some other RFPs that our peers have done to see if this is, is this a common practice or not, what they're suggesting to us. So there may be some changes. That would probably be the largest cardinal change to the RFP is how we look at their proposal with regards to variable and fixed costs.
So Carl, then if we can come back with a timeline, and then also if there's any specific changes that are being made in the RFP that the directors
Yeah.
are made aware of.
We can bring back, this is going to be it's not going to be a quick process. We won't have this out on the street in a month. This is like the biggest procurement we do every 5 years. So it's going to be
Everything's gonna be fine.
everything's going to be a fine.
Okay, Director.
How do we define fine though is the question that hasn't been answered yet.
It's almost-
Lunch.
But Director Smith, you had a final
Yeah,
comment?
real quick, just to lay the foundation is this is an open session for a recommendation from staff that we have the motion on the floor, but we've already had a closed session. It was direction. But there's 2 layers to this. We're still in contract. And we're going down the path while we have a contract to go out to renew a contract and open it up for RFP. So we're still honoring the contract while we're in contract.
that's right.
With this
Yeah,
vendor.
both parties, we
Yes.
both expected
Yeah,
it.
and I just
Yes.
want to make that public statement that we are not canceling anything. We are still in contract.
Absolutely.
Everything's gonna be fine.
I'm not sure that's the word I can resonate with, but it's rocky road. We'll come out and we'll be okay at the end.
Okay, Director, so we do have a motion on the floor, and if we can get a roll call on that motion,
Okay,
please.
so the first motion was by Labar and second by Smith. Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Shirley,
Yes.
Director Worthy.
Yes.
Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Disher.
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Emilio.
Yes.
Director Barrera,
Yes.
Director Carbone.
Yes.
Director Pacheco,
Yes.
Director Velasquez,
Yes,
and then Director Alejo.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion-
okay, so motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that discussion. So we'll be back for more to come on that. So we'll move on to our last item of business, which is an action item, which is on page 79. And this received report from the nominating committee, conduct elections of officers and appoint the representatives for the next 2 years. So I will begin with just, I want to make sure that I articulate the process that we use as part of the nominating committee for selection of the next MST chair and the vice chair. So I just want to begin by thanking the nominating committee members that were made up of Director Kim Shirley and Director Lorraine Worthy for accepting to be on the committee to bring forth the recommendation to this board for the next MST chair and vice chair, and for spending extra time with our meetings, reviewing the bylaws and really deliberating on the recommendation that's put forth for you today. And I also want to begin by saying that this process was not easy for the committee members, and the recommendations that you have before you were made in a very thoughtful, transparent manner that was based on the subcommittees, what the subcommittee deemed to be in the best interest of the Monterey Salinas Transit Agency. And I also want to take a few moments to share the process that was undertaken for this selection and some of the key factors that we considered during our deliberation process. So on May 1st, the subcommittee met via Zoom, and we included our legal counsel, Mr. Michael Loretto, because we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with the bylaws and that we understood the bylaws and we understood the process. So our focus was really on Article 6 of the bylaws in regards to the board of directors requiring the nominating committee to make a recommendation to this board. Based on the bylaws, the only requirement from the committee is to ensure that there was diversity, representation and nominating from the different areas. So as you know, we have the Salinas urbanized area, the Monterey Peninsula cities that include Seaside, Monterey, and urbanized areas of City of Carmel, Monterey, Pacific Grove, Seaside, Delray, Oaks, Sand City, and Marina. And then we also have the Salinas Valley cities, non-urbanized areas. So I just still have to understand some of this language, but cities of Gonzales, Greenfield, Soledad, and King City, and then the county of Monterey that's included as part of that language in our bylaws. And there is no fixed rotation that was identified in the bylaws, just a need to change the chair representation from one group to another, which is what I just shared with you. There is no requirement also that precludes the nomination of a representative of the committee. So I know Lorraine Worthy was part of the committee, and this was really taken into consideration when we discussed thoroughly the recommendation of Director Worthy to be the vice chair position. So I just want to make sure that I point that out. And also per the bylaws, the board is again required to elect the chair and vice chair. The board, again, has the authority to move forward the committee's recommendation, or the board also has the authority to change that and make their own recommendation. So I just wanted to share a little bit on the rationale for the committee's recommendation that you have before you. So while traditionally the previous vice chair is nominated as the future chair, this is not always the case. And it hasn't, well, the most recent time that this occurred on the board was in 2012. So I just wanted to make sure that I stated that. But for us, when we were looking at the committee, when the subcommittee was looking at this, but I think there was a couple of factors that we took into consideration. And one was the complexities of the MST SURF project with the cities of Marina, Seaside, and Sand City. And the committee thought it's best not to have a representative from those cities to serve as chair or vice chair. And as we've had deliberations in regards to some of the challenges with the SURF. So our focus on the committee was trying to avoid the chair from seeking recusal from MST business due to city-related obligations or a perceived conflict of interest. So we've already seen MST and some of its directors having to recuse themselves. So the committee felt it critical to have a chair that could shepherd MST through the challenges and be at the forefront of difficult discussions with local cities, community members, and Coastal Commission. Obviously, we have many of those discussions moving forward. So I just want to make sure that I reiterate again to this board that this was not an easy decision to make. The recommendation that was made was really difficult for two significant reasons. And one was obviously our current vice chair would not be part of the pool of the Peninsula directors to be considered for the chair position. And the recommendation would not be in alignment with the most recent past practice of the board to recommend the vice chair move into the board chair position. But just bear with me a little bit more, because prior to making the final decision, the subcommittee asked me to meet with the vice chair, with Vice Chair Carbone, and also with Director Fisher to express the concerns and also to seek their feedback before we made a final recommendation to this board. So I did talk to both of the directors, shared the feedback from the committee. And I know Director Carbone was not ecstatic about the recommendation, but I know that she did express that she'd be she'd make the decision that was in the best interest of MST. And Director Vischer agreed with the committee's recommendation. So before you, you have the committee's recommendation that was made in accordance with the bylaws in a transparent and really thoughtful manner with the best interest of MST, with the MST organization in mind, and without any political or personal objectives or advantages. So again, I want to reiterate that this was not an easy decision for the committee, but we're confident that the both recommendations that you have before you would be excellent candidates that would lead MST into the next 2 years of critical transformation. And in making our selection, I also want to let the board know that we took 2 major factors into consideration. One was current leadership on the board and commitment to extra, to providing and devoting extra time to engaging above and beyond just our meetings here. And also reviewing the past chair and vice chair positions. And wanting to make sure that we selected those that had not been in these positions in the past, and supporting and amplifying the leadership opportunities on this board. So with that, thank you again for allowing us to be part of this process. I will turn it over to our committee members before we open it up for discussion. Turn it over to our committee members to share their thoughts with you. And I'll begin with Director Worthy and then with Director Shirley to conclude our report.
This has been a very difficult thing for me, and I want everyone in this room to understand that I am someone who looks at optics. I was on the nominating committee, and I was very concerned about the idea of becoming vice chair. You know, I'm sitting on that committee and all of a sudden we are discussing that. And I didn't feel it was appropriate. And I expressed my concern to Mike Laredo. And he said that there is no precedence, everything is fine, you can do that. And we looked at the entire situation as the fact that I have not served in that capacity. My fellow South County and Salinas members have. They've all been members of a vice chair or a chair position. So it took me a couple of days to agree to it because I wasn't sure it was appropriate. And that's why I wanted to let all of you know how I felt about that. I was very concerned about it. And I look to all of you to make the right decision in that capacity. As far as the chair position goes, I walked into that committee meeting assuming that the vice chair would be put into that position, because that's how it's always been done as long as I've been a member of this board. So after discussing it, I still had my concerns. But the most important concern is the entire board. So I look again to all of you. This is our recommendation, but I want everyone to feel comfortable with those recommendations. It is not political. It is what we feel is the best for the board. So that is where I stand. I am a very transparent person, and I am someone who wants everyone to understand my position. Thank you.
Thank you. So I also want to be really transparent with our decisions and how we came about this. I'll be honest, I came in with a different perspective. I didn't know Lorraine's perspective coming in. First, I want to thank Chair Velasquez for the way she coordinated this committee. She texted us to find a time when we can all Zoom. I had no idea that Mike Laredo was going to be there. I was a little surprised, I'll be honest, when he was there, but I was happy that he was there because it was clear that we were going to have questions that we needed answered. And so I was happy he was there to sort of witness our discussions. I came in with the lens of I need to know what's best for MST. And since I've been on this board, you've all been talking about you approved the surf busway before I was here. But that has been a project that is very costly. It's very time consuming. It's very important for our region. And so it was important to me that we choose a leader who won't have any perceived conflict at all. We need to have someone who can champion this project for us without any need to recuse. And it really is, that would be a difficult position for Sand City and Marina and Seaside. I don't want to put them in that kind of position. We need to have someone at the leadership of MST who can fully commit to this project. So for me, I was coming into this meeting, and again, I hadn't talked to Lorraine or Anna about how they felt about it. I was going in feeling like we need to choose someone else who could be separate from the surf busway. So that was my priority in terms of my criteria. Second is really elevating people who have already shown leadership within our organization. And so I know that Director Barron was, on the ad hoc committee that presented the changes to how we present our statistical sort of analysis for bus reporting out of every month. So I know that he takes it seriously. He has a vested interest in it. He's put effort into that. My third criteria is really providing new leadership opportunities for the people who have put in the effort here. So looking at people who haven't had these types of leadership positions before. And lastly, really, I think the person who leads our organization should only wear one transportation hat. I think it gets complicated with TMC if you're serving on TMC and on MST. And so I'd like to have someone who's at the chair position who only has one transportation hat. So again, in terms of the chair position, Director Barron came to mind because of the work he's already done for MST. He's completely out of the way for the surf busway, and he could be a really great advocate for that. I also feel that Director Barron asks tough questions. And I honestly think MST is a better organization because of the questions that he asks. And then, again, I understand that this is out of the norm to not choose the vice chair. And I recognize that, but I'm going back to what's best for MST. And it's not that vice chair couldn't do this position. It's just that I feel like going forward with Surf Busway, we're going to be talking about this for the next 2 years. We need someone who's there who can really speak to the Surf Busway in a way that they don't have to be compromised in any way. I didn't know who was going to be our vice chair, but I do know that Director Worthy is chair of our Administrative Performance Committee. So again, here's someone who's shown leadership within our organization, hasn't had the opportunity to be vice chair or chair. And so I know it was awkward. I know that she has a lot on her plate. But at the end, I felt like she was the best choice. And so I was grateful for Director Velasquez to go back and talk to Vice Chair Carbone, to talk to Vice Chair Vischer about, why we didn't consider them for this position. I felt like we were very, transparent about that. And then it came back to us that they were okay with those decisions, which made me feel better about putting forward this recommendation. So I feel very solid in the decisions we made. I felt like I have my criteria. We had some great discussions, and we came out united within those discussions. So with that, I'd like to put forward a motion to appoint Director Barron as our next chair and Director Worthy as our vice chair for MST.
I'll second.
Madam Chair, before you take a vote, you do need to go out to the public on this.
And I will put up a substitute motion because the reasons, I understand the reasons you put forward, but it's honestly disrespectful. You're saying because of maybe something that might happen on the surf, she doesn't deserve it. And then you choose to pick a chair where we all assumed it was going to be a rotation without notifying the rest of the board. We have other members who have not served as chair. That would have been just as viable. So we should have received a note from the nominating committee that we're planning on doing this. And it's frustrating. The motion is, the substitute motion would be to move forward Vice Chair Carbone into chair. Now, and with Lorraine as vice chair. South County, we are a very limited pool. We are really down to Lorraine and then the county. So that's the substitute motion. I was set to hear the recommendation and honestly just blown away that how you tried to justify that. I just feel it's very disrespectful of individuals who are moving through the leadership path. And where the committees, the chair, the vice chair and the chair of the committees are the leadership path towards the vice chair and the chair of the board. So there is one in place. And I assume there will be a second.
Yes, there is a second here.
Okay, so there's a second.
Alejo.
By Director Smith, but I want a point of privilege here. And I want a point of privilege to be able to respond to your comments, Director LeBar. And I think I want to combat your, I think the word that you use, disrespectful, is very disrespectful to me and to the rest of the subcommittee members as well. So you can use those words. I choose not to, but I also feel that's very disrespectful of you to disrespect the work of the committee. And I also want to clarify, and this is why I wanted to articulate that the bylaws do not require it to be the vice chair and the vice chair position. And if this board wants to go back and it wants to make sure that in the bylaws, if that's what the board wants, then that we have clear language in our bylaws that articulate that the vice chair is going to move into the chair position and that there is no need for a subcommittee. There is no need to come back and make a recommendation for those positions, because then we don't need to be spending our time as a subcommittee members either trying to figure out, what is in the best interest of MST. So just to clarify that you're inaccurate, because there is no language that our bylaws say that it has to be the vice chair and the chair.
But I'm not
We'll get
inaccurate
to that.
because I didn't say
So,
that.
point of privilege. So I'm asking this for that if the board wants to have a further discussion in terms of that being how the board wants to perceive in the future, then that come back to the board as a discussion, because that's not the way it currently is. It's been the way it's been handled, but it's not in our bylaws. Director Barrera?
Madam Chair, and I can respect words, but I think the one that can clear the air, I would like to hear, I know you mentioned that you spoke to both Marina and San City. I would like to hear from the vice chair where she's at with this. If she did agree that she's not interested in being chair, if I may be careful with my words here. Yeah, I would like to hear from her, and if she's not interested, it'd be easy to move forward, but we haven't heard from her as of yet. Even we're discussing that position.
Okay, so I was approached and, I thought I was gonna be, going into the chair position. I didn't know that, I thought that was kind of an automatic deal. But, the nominating committee was formed, and if they don't feel that I should be in that position, as what I heard today, I'm willing to do the work of the board. That's what I'm here for. And as far as, wearing two hats, I wear a lot of hats, and when, with transportation, so I'm over there now at Tampsey. And, I heard it before that, if you're sitting on MST, you probably got a conflict over if you sit on Tampsey too. But I represent my city. I could put those things aside for whatever hat I'm wearing. That's the hat I'm wearing with the best interest of whatever board I'm on. Because that's just how I am. Fair and honest. And I don't have any personal agendas. And I think everybody who knows me should know that. So no hidden agendas, I'm not sneaky, you know, I'll do the will of the board, I'll do the work. So that's where I'm at, and that's how I come before you here, you know, if, you know, you want me for the chair position or not, you know, take a vote on it.
I guess I'm asking, do you want it? That says, we're discussing your position. The chair did say she spoke to you and you were okay with that, so instead of taking us around the park, I mean, do you?
So if, when I spoke with the chair, she said, we discussed, you know, the conflicts. And then I kind of after that, their discussion, I thought, gosh, you know, we all got conflicts. You know, I got a conflict in Sand City if somebody's building a house within 500 feet from me. I, you know, leave the room. I actually lose my voice. You know, I can't talk about it,
What's this?
you know.
Sir.
Yeah.
Do you feel, that was discussed, do you feel that's a conflict of you being the chair?
So as me sitting with the city, as a sit with the city, you know, there is, for me, there's no conflict. And I'll tell you, I will, you know, I mean, you know, I'm the mayor, but there's certain rules about spending tax dollars on private lands. So private areas, what I learned over at Tampsey is if you go into homeowner association and they want to put gated up to close off traffic because there's people driving through there, you're not able to do that, to put money towards a private street, or that changes things unless they'd want to pay for it themselves. Unless they would want to, if you wanted to make something private, they should be the ones responsible for it. That we just heard over at Tampsey regarding something off of the Highway 68 corridor, for people cutting through a subdivision over there. So we had to make a hard call there. And but that's the deal. That is, you know, if you can't fund private property, you know, or a shopping center area, well, that's the rule. You know, actually in Sand City, that their Costco shopping center, that's called California Avenue, and it runs to Costco. Then it's a private parking area. Then over at Playa, California begins again. So it's distinct, you know, that's private parking. But this here I'll deal with when I have my city hat on over there too, so. And I do have information with me to take with me on my little trip to Sacramento. With the design review person who's gonna be riding with me.
So, thank you, Director.
If that helps.
So let me go to Director, I know Director Alejo had his hand up, and then I'll come back to Director Smith.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say that each of us, when we speak here, we are entitled by the First Amendment to express our opinions. These are our opinions when we're speaking, of how we react to a recommendation on our agenda. And I have to frankly also say, when I saw the agenda and the recommendation, I was very disappointed and actually saddened for MST. This is my 8th year serving as county supervisor and also a board member of MST. And I've never seen this level of disrespect come up in a recommendation to slight one of our respected colleagues who has put in her time, who is well loved, who we know works very hard for her city, but on a lot of other regional boards as well. And we're not only looking at our bylaws, we're also looking at our practices as an MST board. And unless there is a real compelling reason why a vice chair should not step up and be elevated to serve as chair, we should otherwise back that person if she has put in her time, has put in the work, has rolled up her sleeves. And that is what Mayor Marian Carbone has done. And frankly, as a lawyer, the claims about a potential conflict of interest, I think those are disingenuous. they're baseless. Because in fact, all of us sitting here, nobody has had to recuse themselves so far on the SURF project. And it's unlikely in the future. And if you actually look at conflict of interest, one, it has to do with personal property. And number two, it's only when there's like a legal issue, when perhaps your jurisdiction has gone against MST, and then you cannot attend the closed session because you have conflicting perhaps adversarial positions on a potential lawsuit. But none of that has come up here for any of our members. So to claim that that's the reason why to snub our respected friend and colleague, I just find it totally invented and without any merit. I do want to say, though, Marianne Carbone, as we all know, is well-loved, well-respected in this community, is a dedicated public servant. But I not only find it disrespectful to try to snub her from her leadership role at this time, but also I think it's discriminatory. Prior to ever being elected office, I was a legal aid attorney. I worked for California Rural Legal Assistance. I did discrimination cases. And so this really rubs me the wrong way as a former public interest attorney, where one of our colleagues, who is the only Native American elected official in all of Monterey County, only indigenous elected official, and as a woman, being snubbed for no good basis here before us. Nothing compelling has been presented why she shouldn't deserve to be elevated to this important position representing this agency. So for me, I think it would be a wrong statement, a wrong precedent for this board to take such a discriminatory action when there has been no valid basis to on record why Mayor Carbone is not merited to be elevated as the next MST chair. So I support the alternative motion. The only thing else I would say on the nominations committee, as we have other nominations committee for leadership, for example, in TAMSI, is that usually when somebody decides, the practice has been, if you decide to serve on the nominating committee, you agree that you're going to recuse yourself from being considered for that position. Otherwise, there is an appearance of a conflict when you're on the committee and then you're accepting the nomination yourself. So I have no issue with our colleague Lorraine Worthy. I think she would do a great job as vice chair. But as she also recognized, this is against the practice. It does create appearance of a conflict. But I just wanted to point that I could accept this, but it is going against our practice that when members agree to be part of the nominating committee, they're not going to be later agree to accept the nomination for themselves. Otherwise, they should not agree to serve on there. So I think that's going against the practice, the historical practice of the nominations committee. This is a rare circumstance. It hasn't happened in my years as an MST board member. But I just want to put that on the record. I have no issue at all with my colleague, Ms. Worthy. I think she'll do a fine job, and I support her serving in this role. But I just want to say in the future, if we have members that are going to serve, please have them recuse themselves from being considered for nominations to avoid that appearance of a conflict. But otherwise, I want to strongly support that our respected colleague, Mayor Carbone, be given the opportunity to serve. She's put in her time serving as vice chair. And I think she merits to be elevated as the next chair of MST. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Well said already. You know, I find that when you are trying to make a strategic decision, absent compelling reasons, you follow your gut, you follow your common sense. And when we have a person who's on the board, established leader in the community, who's a mayor, who is very capable and has been the vice mayor, absent compelling reasons to go any other direction, I don't see the logic of the recommendation of the nomination committee to say that Ms. Carbone should not be considered for the chair's position. I just think that it's a reach. I don't understand the logic. There's no compelling reason that's been identified except for the what ifs and maybes. And if something did come up in the future, we all know the mechanism to deconflict that and step aside for that topic. And there's a vice chair. So we get around these things all the time. So that's why I supported the alternative motion. I think that Mayor Carbone should be the next chair because that's the custom. It doesn't matter that I can't find some line item in the bylaws that gives permission or pathway for an alternative. That to me sounds like it's using legalism to try and justify a motivation by the nominating committee. I know it's difficult on the nominating committee, but it just seems like it's almost one of those groupthink things that kind of got carried away for too little justification and no compelling reason. So I'm back to the alternative motion. I just think that we need to honor and follow the custom of the vice chair stepping up to the chair. And I agree that a South County selection should be the next vice chair.
Director Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to thank the nominating committee, and I think that they acted very respectfully. This is not about being undeserving. I agree with the recommendation because as a council member of Marina, I did have to recuse myself at the previous MST board meeting when the SURF project was being discussed. And it's good that I did because, as you know, the city of Marina the council had 2 meetings to deal with the LCP appeals to the approval. And after that first meeting, in which I expressed my support for the project, I did receive an email from a member of the public suggesting that I should recuse myself from the next council meeting when the SURF was being discussed and voted on. And I had to consult with the city attorney, and he did, after discussing, he said it was okay for me not to recuse myself, but I did have to disclose that I had not had any contact with MST staff, and that I had since the appeals were filed. So if I had not recused myself here, I probably would have been prevented from even being able to discuss the SURF project, let alone vote. And this was not just for me, but also for the TEMC board member. TEMC board member in our council. So this is why I really go with the recommendation of the nomination committee. And it's not about being disrespectful at all or not deserving to the position. So thank you.
Thank you. And let me go to the directors that haven't spoken yet. Director.
Just briefly, I respect this. I agree with the substitute motion. I think the nominating committee did nothing wrong at all. They made the best choice. Their recommendation, and making tough choices is often hard to do. So I respect and admire all of your recommendations. But I believe the Mayor Cambone can lead in a way justifiable to move the MST board forward. I believe she served in this role in the past and has done a great job. So I continue to respect her to do a job, but I think there is nothing wrong with people making alternative decisions because we all make alternative suggestions. And it's the will of the committee to move something forward, whatever they be, and we've all walked away moving forward.
Thank you, Director Pacheco. Director Emilio.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say, I always, when I'm sitting on the city council and making decisions, it's going to be the best for the city of Pacific Grove. I'm always got that in the back of my mind. We're at MST right now. And Jeff, I have no problems with you personally. I don't have anything. Same thing with you, Lorraine. But I have to say, I do agree with the alternative motion, substitute motion.
Okay, thank you, Director Emilio. Then Director Shirley.
Yeah, I just want to talk about how disappointed I am in being accused of being disrespectful and also discriminatory when it's very clear why we made these decisions. And I felt like we were very respectful in asking, Chair Velasquez talk to Vice Chair Carbone to see how she felt about it. And we received back that she understood why we made that decision. So I feel like that was a very respectful process. I can't go back to the board and let you know, hey, this is what we've decided. I mean, this is the process, is to come back to the board and have a discussion about it. Being discriminatory, that is not what we're about. I mean, our chair is a woman of color. We are all women. I always want to promote women, but in this position, I need to look at what's best for MST. And we need to not have any perception of conflict, and look at what, Director Fisher had to go through just to have that vote. I mean, let's put someone else in the position who can move the surf busway forward without any potential conflicts or having to recuse themselves. We may need every vote we can. So I just need to make that statement, Supervisor Alejo, I'm disappointed in your comments, and Mayor LaBarre, I always want to be respectful, and I do believe our process was respectful. Director Worthy.
I do have to speak on this. First of all, I appreciate everybody's comments in this room. Everything I do is with my gut. Always. Whatever my first gut reaction is usually right. I respect all of my colleagues here, but I've had my reservations. So I'm going to be clear, because that's how I have to say it. Thank you, everyone who's spoken today.
Yeah, thank you. And then we're gonna go ahead and move to we have a substitute motion, and thank you. I know it was a difficult discussion, and I also just want to end by saying, the women that were on the committee, actually there was 3 women on the committee, right? And so I'm a woman of color. I'm the first Latina elected as mayor. So I'm very keen about people saying or stating discriminatory, because I've been discriminated on the basis of sex. And so I want to make sure that, I state that for the record, that is very, I'm very disappointed as well in terms of Director Alejo's comments in terms of discriminatory, because that's not at all how we made the decision, especially us all women on the board, on the committee, and also being disrespectful. Director LaBarre, I have a lot of respect for you, but being called disrespectful for me was really disappointing. And I think at the end, this is why we had this discussion. It wasn't an easy decision to make. And I appreciate everybody's comments, and I articulated the reasons why we made those decisions. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's up to this board to make the final decision. And so the process, if the board wants to change it, let's go back to change the policy, so that way it's clear for next time, and we avoid these kind of discussions and accusations that are not needed as part of our leadership roles for this organization. So with that, I will end the discussion, and we will go into a roll call, please.
Yep. Madam Chair, just for clarification, I'm not sure that you've had public comment on this, but if you have had public comment or after public comment, then you should take the alternate motion first. That's the motion on the floor to be voted upon first. And if that fails, then you would vote upon the main motion.
Okay, I have not taken public comment. Thank you for that reminder. So for any of those members of the public that are joining us here in our chambers, if we can please, if there's any comments, public comments. Okay, seeing none. Any members of the public that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, I see none, so I will bring it back then for a roll call on the substitute motion.
Substitute motion made by Director LaBarre and seconded by Smith to have Vice Chair Carbone as chair with Worthy as vice chair. Director Barron,
No.
Director Shirley,
No.
Director Worthy,
Yes.
Director LaBarre,
Aye.
Director Fisher,
No.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Emilio,
Aye.
Director Barrera,
No.
Director Carbone,
Aye.
Director Pacheco,
Aye.
Director Velasquez,
No.
and Director Alejo.
Aye.
Passes.
So that's 7 and then 6. I mean, 7, 5 with 1 absent.
Okay, so the motion passes. Congratulations to those directors.
This is how we were.
To Vice Chair, now Chair Carbone, and to our Vice Chair, Lorraine Wording. Thank you.
Chair. 20 seconds, please.
20 seconds, because we gotta move.
Yes, on this topic, I just want to remind everybody that the words we hear are going through our filters and our perceptions. Just don't get too over responsive to the words you hear. I think the spirit is that we're a team, we're a board, we have much work to do. No disrespect for anyone is intended, but we choose words in the heat of the debate to try and convince someone else to believe in us to get a vote. So we understand that, we get that.
With
But
respect.
But I'm just trying to make good of.
With Chair.
Wait, let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentence.
To finalize.
Can I finish my sentence, Chair?
Discussion, please.
May I finish my sentence? It was interrupted.
So we want to make sure that we had the dialogue. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the spirit of concluding, but I think we had the discussion. Let's end it there and let's move on to the next item.
Okay, let's just meet afterwards. That's all.
Okay, so let's move on to item 6-1, which is now our recognitions and special presentations. So June 2024, Employee of the Month, Matthias Castor, a coach operator, and I'll turn this over to.
Marzette Henderson.
Good afternoon, Marzette Henderson, Transportation Manager with MST. Thank you. We're excited to announce Coach Operator Matthias Castor is our Employee of the Month for June 2024. We wanted to highlight Matthias's contributions to MST and his performance as a coach operator as part of our ongoing efforts to highlight what I'll call our silent heroes, people who do their jobs well, and so well, in fact, that you hardly ever hear about them and sometimes forget that they're around. Since joining us in October 2007, Matthias has consistently demonstrated dedication and professionalism and commitment to good customer service. He has an incredible ability to remain calm under pressure and composed in challenging situations. So good, in fact, that in our database, he has 0 accidents and safety records in our operations database. He also has impeccable attendance, among our best. Matthias has consistently received positive feedback from our passengers, peers, for his politeness and helpfulness, and just being all around friendly. He's also well dressed and his uniform's always neat. So in short, we're honored to have Matthias as part of our team and appreciate his contributions and the opportunity to highlight his contributions to MST. Please join me in congratulating and recognizing Coach Operator Matthias as Employee of the Month for June 2024.
Coach Operator Matthias could not be here with us today, and he indicated that he would not be with us here in July either. We gave him that opportunity. So, pending his being selected as Employee of the Year, then maybe that's our next opportunity to actually see him here.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So thank you so much. Please extend our congratulations to him for his outstanding performance, leadership, and dedication to MST. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we don't have it on our agenda, but we did have this to be able to award or give to Director Worthy her 5-year pen. So, congratulations. We obviously know today was not an easy discussion, but thank you.
It was a
so
great
much.
discussion. Like the bugs.
Can we get a picture?
Oh.
Yeah, with that
Yeah,
said,
Cleo?
Madam Chair, I heard that if we stay
Awesome.
after 12, MST provides sandwiches.
Okay, so we'll get a picture with her now.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on.
11 more minutes.
It's already, yeah, let's go. So the next item is our reports and information. You have all that in your packet. Unless anyone has any questions, please reach out to to Carl. And on reports and comments and referrals on, do we have any board members' comments and announcements? And I have an expense, but that'll be in July, so I'll do my report for the CTA next.
I don't know if this is the appropriate moment, but the summer pass, the $38 started, so we can. They can ride the bus for just $38.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Director Labar, did you have a comment? No. Okay, so with that, then move into board member referrals for future agendas. I think we noted those on
East Garrison.
East Garrison, and then also on the letter for the roundtable discussion, the roundtable.
Business roundtable
roundtable.
of Taxpayer Deception Act.
Yeah, and I would like, and not now, but further, but I would like to bring back the policies on the bylaws to be able to be reviewed. please.
I would suggest that for a strategic
Madam
planning
Chair,
update
yeah.
session.
And if I can request something, every board meeting, everybody should wear this cap.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then you have the attachments on your report, and with that, if there's, we don't have a closed session. So with that, I adjourn this meeting at 12:40. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, your last one.